Today we're asking, what is God's form? Or what does God look like? And we read in John 5 verse 37, where Jesus said, "And the Father who sent me, he has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form." In the Old Testament, we see moments where God has a human form. So Jacob, it says, wrestled with God, and God touched his hip, and his hip came out of joint. He walked with a limp for the rest of his life. In Daniel, it says a hand appears and writes on the wall. We assume that's the hand of God. However, elsewhere in Scripture, it says that God does not have a body. He is spirit. This attributing human form to God is called anthropomorphism, and sometimes we do it to give comfort to ourselves, because imagining something or someone that is outside of our knowledge base or our experience can seem somewhat disconcerting. So to give God a human form essentially helps us to connect with him in a more meaningful way. However, God is so much bigger and more vast than what we could ever imagine. And to even start to meditate on what Jesus means here by he is the only person who has seen God's form is really interesting. To think about how wide and vast God is and what he might even look like. Does he look like light, or does he look like matter? What does he look like? How is his form? What is he made of? Is far beyond our comprehension. And so certainly for some of the folks in the New Testament and in the Old Testament, we see them describing God in human form to help us to connect with him in a more meaningful way. It means that we won't be scared half to death every time we think about God. Whilst we're meant to be reverent and be fearful of God in some respects, we're not meant to be afraid of him to look at. With that all being said, the Bible does tell us that God invites us into a closer relationship with him so that we too, like Jesus, might see his form and see his glory. Paul says that he was caught up to the third heaven. It says that Stephen saw the heavens open above him. It says that John was called up to heaven and had a tour of heaven, maybe with an angel, maybe with Jesus. We'll find out one day. But here's the point. Us as humans are called into a close relationship with God so that we might also see his form. Unfortunately for these religious leaders of the time, they had neither seen his form or heard his voice ever. And so they had no way of explaining who God was or what his values were. Jesus says, "I do and I have a connection with him in a meaningful way. I can tell you what heaven is like and what God's values are like." Today, if you want to get closer to God, the route is through Jesus. So why don't you try to connect with Jesus today by simply praying, "Jesus, I want to be near you so that I could be near the Father, that I might see his form as well." And maybe you can pray a really brave prayer. "God, show me your glory